Good evening and welcome to our special called April 24, 2024 meeting of the City of Tuscaloosa Planning and Zoning Commission. This time I'd like to introduce staff. Ashley Kreitz, Executive Director, Urban Development, Zach Pons, Director of Planning, Caitlin Giles, Development Review Manager, Jimbo Woodson, Deputy City Attorney. There are 9 members of the Planning Commission, all of them are appointed by the Mayor for staggered terms with the exception of the City Council representative who is appointed by the City Council. I ask Commission members to introduce themselves and state their occupation, beginning with Mr. Dooley.
All right, Vince Dooley, UA Design Architect.
Tim Harrison, General Contractor.
Eddie Pugh, retired.
Bill Wright, Business Owner. There are sign-up sheets outside for public comment. If you did not sign up, you will still be given an opportunity to speak during the public portion of the agenda. Procedures tonight. The Commission will take up items in the order of the agenda. The Commission will receive a presentation from staff regarding zoning text changes necessitated through text testing, along with minor changes and updates to the proposed zoning map that they have identified between the creation and present day. The Commission will vote to accept or reject the changes for final recommendations to City Council later this summer. This is not the final vote on those items. The final vote is expected in July of 2024. After the staff presentation, the floor will be open to public comment. Staff will assist in reviewing the comments submitted online. Others in attendance will be welcomed after online comments are reviewed. Online comments are separated into 2 categories: comments of support and comments of concern. Comments of support generally do not require Commission action in terms of a vote. For comments of concern, the Commission will decide whether to accept the proposed changes or leave as is. Individuals wishing to express support or opposition will be given 3 minutes to speak. Only the Planning and Zoning Commission can grant specified time extension to an individual. Public comment will be received, the floor will close to public comment, and the Commission will open discussion among themselves, reserving the opportunity to vote to accept or reject any proposed changes for final consideration at the review meetings that will take place this year. These proceedings are video recorded and broadcast live. All public comments should be made at the podium into the microphone. Clerk, please first state your name and address for the record. Jurisdiction. Regarding zoning text amendments, Section 11-52-76 of the Code of Alabama states, the legislative body of such municipality shall provide for the manner in which such regulations and restrictions and the boundaries of such districts shall be determined, established, and enforced from time to time, amended, supplemented, or changed, and may adopt such ordinance as may be necessary to carry into effect and make effective the provisions of this article. The Planning and Zoning Commission serves as a recommending body to the legislative body. While the zoning text amendments will be considered in pieces, they will not be enforced until the full zoning text is adopted and the zoning map changes implemented. In layman's terms, if there is a vote at any point to recommend changes, they will not be enforced on any property until the City Council adopts this zoning text and the zoning map changes formally through many public hearings. At this time, I would ask, do any members of the Commission have any conflicts of interest or possible conflicts for any topics on the agenda for discussion this evening? If so, please state for the record. With that, we will begin.
Good evening, Commission. First, we'll start with our meeting expectations. Of course, we want to note our steering committee members, and if any of them are here to speak, we would please ask that they note their role in the process when they come up to speak. For Planning and Zoning Commission members, again, we're here to review that draft code and propose map amendments. Please refrain from arguing with public commenters. Listen, ask questions, and only if you do not understand and need clarification, and please be respectful as we get through these comments tonight. Meetings will begin at 5 and end at 7. If a topic is not finished, we'll roll it into the next scheduled meeting. Staff will utilize a 3-minute timer and make sure it's visible to all parties. Planning and Zoning Commission members can grant a specific time extension if voted on. Staff will manage the flow of the meeting for efficiency as we move through. All right, going into our future land use character map, we want to review how we've gotten here. We, of course, have had our Forum on the Future, our open house sessions, map comments, text comments, all leading us to where we are. We want to know our steering committee members for this area, District 5, District 6. Going into our future land use character map, this is not a mandate for development, but a policy guide that will be implemented through our new zoning regulations, and it will be the basis for potential future zoning updates beyond this process. Multiple zoning districts can be appropriate to implement the future land use character types, and we'll see that as we move into the zoning code. Here's an overview of those future land use character types. And this is our future land use character map for this area tonight. It's a pretty expansive map. To familiarize you, you see 5 points and Holt over on the left side, moving over to Mercedes on the right. Moving into our zoning map. This was, of course, created using the future land use character map, our existing zoning, our current land uses, and staff's professional judgment. They were posted on our framework website, and we've received public comment on those. We'll use this meeting to discuss those comments. Here's an overview of our new zoning districts. And we want to start with some area-specific zoning text discussions. We'll move first into single-family residential estate. This is what's known today as the LCOD area, remaining the same. The boundaries of this area are not changing. And here's an overview of what those zoning standards are. We also want to note some updates and overview of our commercial zones. Beginning with neighborhood commercial, which is an equivalent of BN, we noticed that it was pared down significantly from what BN is today. So we've actually added in some additional uses. Pet grooming as a permitted use. The other 4 on your list are all going to be special exceptions. That includes private club or lodge, a daycare center, contractor office, and light vehicle fuel station, which is a gas station. We noted that these uses are neighborhood-centric and are often placed close to neighborhoods, so they fit the character of this district. General commercial, we are also proposing a few changes to remove multifamily dwelling from the permitted uses, remove self-storage from permitted uses, and add contractor office as a special exception. Material standards were added to both GC and NC at the January 31st meeting. In HC, which is highway commercial, we're changing self-storage from a permitted use to a special exception. All right, let's get into the map. This black outline is our area. Here are our council districts, encompassing council districts 5 and 6. And here is that zoning map. I'll give you a minute to review. Specifically, we'll call out what we had just referenced. Your LCOD layer or area is right over here. And this was the future land use map. I'm sorry, take one step back. This is our existing zoning, our future land use map, and our proposed zoning map. Staff has no proposed updates to the original zoning map that was published online. So with that, we'll move into public comments. Did you have any items to discuss on the text changes? Or,
Not at the moment.
okay. As they're pulling up those comments, we will be sure to use that 3-minute timer and again, order these comments individually. All right, our first one is from Vanessa Lundberg. This is off of the Buttermilk Road area, and her comment is a comment of concern. She thinks the zoning should be SFR2. Her comment says, as a resident of Camden Lake, I do not support changing our neighborhood from R1 to general plan development. To designate an already constructed and otherwise complete neighborhood as a planned development does not make good sense for residents. Planned development, quotes, for what, who, and most importantly, why? Aside from open space and a small pond, we have no significant construction hinted at in the zoning ordinance draft document. Rezoning opens up the neighborhood to growth that doesn't fit the area. Would you be okay with a helipad, research and development facility, conference center, bus station, or a drug rehabilitation facility built in the middle of your neighborhood? The change from residential to GPD would make these scenarios possible, and that is concerning. If the goal is to utilize open space / lots, then zone those areas appropriately. Leave lots currently zoned as residential out of that plan. Additionally, infrastructure on the east side of the city, especially along Buttermilk Road, is poor. Windy days often mean power outages and rotting above-ground power lines. Water pressure fluctuates wildly and is often low. Multiple neighbors have complained about low water pressure, and we're told that the city is aware of the problem. A plan for a proposed neighborhood north of Chestnut Street was recently withdrawn due to water pressure issues and the significant upgrades required in order to begin construction. Please consider first improving infrastructure for residents who already live here instead of prioritizing future residents who don't.
And Ms. Lundberg actually has 2 comments. We believe they're the same. Verbatim comments.
So both dots on this property are hers?
Yes, well, in Camden Lake as a whole, I was able to email Ms. Lundberg this morning and just provide a little clarity regarding the general plan development and how Camden Lake is a planned unit development that was established back in the late 2000s. And our common practice has been to rezone those PUDs to general plan development to maintain their existing approvals, so there won't be any changes to their neighborhoods. What they know from the late 2000s will go on.
Okay.
I don't know if Ms. Lundberg is here this evening, if she has anything to add to her comment. I know she put comment only on the map.
So we've covered both her comments into the record. Is Ms. Lundberg here? Maybe your conversation has,
I hope so. I hope it alleviated her concerns.
so we don't see a need to change what we've already recommended to staff. So,
It's up to you all, yeah.
no, I think we leave it as it is.
All right, we will make note of that. Our next public comments is from Brock Quarter. It's located east of Bowdoin Villa, I believe.
Hang on a second, we're working through, working multiple screens at a time.
We just want to make note that it'll stay as is.
Yeah. All right, and the next one is Mr. Quarter's comment at east of Bowdoin Villa, west of Woodland Forest.
All right, this is a comment of support. He thinks the the zoning should be SFR 4. When comparing infrastructure construction costs to the sales comparison values of R1 homes around this parcel and the other larger parcels surrounding Tall Pines Golf Club, R1 development is highly unlikely to ever take place for the future of Tall Pines Golf Club, and in turn the desirability of the homes fronting it in Woodland Forest. Additional density in there, as when done correctly, can bring vitality and energy to this area of Tuscaloosa. The alternative is that it remains vacant, most likely, and the golf club continues to struggle.
Well, we've had this happen last month where someone wanted something to be rezoned. And I think we took the position that we were not going to rezone a piece of property for potential what it could be. And that the property owner or the future developer, when he acquires or gains access to it, then come before this body and ask for a rezone at that point. But at this point, we want to leave it as is R1 recommended by staff. Anybody? I don't see Mr. Corder in the audience.
I don't believe he's here to speak. All right, we'll make note that we'll keep that as is and move on to our next comment. All right, this is a group of several comments west of Interstate Parkway and south of I-20. The commenters list includes Jessica Ireland, Rod Shirley, Zachary Cash, and Yusha Midkiff. We'll go ahead and read through
Well,
all of
and before
those.
we get into these comments, Ms. Giles, if you'll go through the sewer and the floodway areas, because I think that will help a little bit of, it will help inform some of the comments
Sure.
that we'll have.
Absolutely. The comments that we're seeing are coming from this neighborhood down here. It's about this subject property. What we want to make note of is this hashed area here. This is going to be floodway. There is existing commercial development up here. I believe they're worried about the connectivity or the impact that future commercial development would have on their neighborhood here. The barriers that we see to development currently, and as we've expressed, or as we've experienced in the history, as plans have been brought to our office, is the existence of these sewer lines being a barrier to development, as well as this floodway area. Connectivity into this neighborhood, there is a small substreet here, but that would not be adequate for a commercial development.
Additionally, Commission, the only available developable land on the property that is up for discussion in a moment is going to be this portion right in here, this small corner, which is only accessible because of the floodway, would only be accessible off of Interstate Parkway. And so we just want to let you know about those couple of things before we get into these comments.
And I'm going to circle her comment for you so you can see it a little more clearly. It's for that piece of property. All right, from Jessica Ireland, her comment is a comment of concern. She thinks this zoning should be neighborhood commercial. Her comment says that Woodland Forest is a wonderful neighborhood. The key word is neighborhood. The price of property touches, this price, I believe she means piece of property, touches Locust Lane. This comment is from Zachary Cash. Give us 1 second. From Rod Shirley, he says, this is a comment of support. Again, I know we've had technical issues with that. He thinks this property should be highway commercials. This property should not be NC, not ML or HC. From Zachary Cash, he says this area provides a necessary buffer between the Buttermilk Road businesses and Woodland Forest. As a neighbor at the end of Overbrook Road, my biggest concern is that a developer might want to connect Interstate Parkway and Locust Lane despite the environmental challenges. Overbrook Road already sees steady traffic, and creating a thoroughfare would make the street significantly less safe for our children. Because this parcel is mostly protected wetland and it is connected to 2 areas of residential property and county zoning, it makes the most sense for this parcel to be zoned SFR1 as well. As neighbors, we would be fine with new neighbors in single-family dwellings that fit into our neighborhood, but we do not want a busy business district and thoroughfare directly adjoining our quiet, secluded, wooded, and beautiful neighborhood that contains many young parents and seasoned grandparents alike. Our neighborhood is special because of these things. It is why we choose to live here as opposed to other great areas. We want to keep it this way, and zoning this parcel SFR1 will better ensure the future of our neighborhood for the future generations of families of Tuscaloosa. All right, this is from Yusha Midkiff. This is a concern for the Woodland Forest neighborhood, which is residential. The highway commercial district is too close to existing houses. The minimum buffer of 20 feet between a residential and highway business is too little. I believe that was all 4 comments that are on this specific piece of property.
Can you bring back up the flood map again?
So one of the conversations we were having before the meeting started was the fact that, one, you had the floodplain, which is undevelopable. And then you also had the issue of, if there ever was any kind of connectivity, it's coming through a commercial corridor, which we don't want to have a residential ever going through access through a commercial area. I think the neighborhoods are protected, one, by the fact it's a floodplain, and the fact that we would not be rezoning anything residential coming off Interstate Parkway.
I couldn't see this commission ever approving a connection from this corridor, the current corridor with the current businesses into this neighborhood.
Right.
Anyway, even with the restrictions of the floodway and the topography issues, as well as right-of-way for the sewers, there's a lot going on here, and we've set a precedent of trying to protect neighborhoods, and in this case, I'm fairly certain this commission would protect this neighborhood connectivity. I don't see any reason to change it.
What is it zoned now?
The property is zoned ML today, so taking it to highway commercial would be a down zoning.
It's an improvement.
Yeah.
That's
More protections.
what I looked at. It's less evasive.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Right.
Reducing the severity of uses.
It's
Be a step up or a step down, however you want to look at it. It's not as
more protected.
commercial, I guess you could say.
Right.
I believe some of the commenters are here in person. If you'd
Okay,
like to
sure.
go ahead and invite them up. We'll pop back up that original slide.
Do we have a sign-up sheet as well?
The sign-up sheet, the individual who signed up on the sign-up sheet is signed up for the piece of property that she commented on during the TNT meeting as well, so.
We'll start it with Jessica Ireland. All right. Is Rod Shirley here? What about Zachary Cash? Usha?
Oh, it didn't show.
Commented on it, it's not showing. My comments on the properties next to it aren't showing as well.
Interesting. We'll have, I'm sorry that happened, we'll look into it. But there is also, there'll be opportunity to speak. There's no need not to.
So we want to come forward and hear those comments? Yep. Name and address for the record, please.
Joan Barth, 5541 Woodbury Lane. So I'm sorry about the comments not showing up. One of the things that I am concerned about is that that it's being rezoned, right, to the highway commercial, whereas it's currently light industrial. Now, I would agree that's probably an improvement, but it's not what your practice has been. You know, your practice has been to not change the zoning, right? Unless the property owner comes forward and does the normal sort of procedures. We're grateful for the sort of acknowledgement that there's development challenges in that area, and we do think that those probably protect us somewhat. But I think it would be better if we sort of followed the procedures that you've put in place and have him come forward, because then if it goes highway commercial, then we'll have a chance to sort of see what that might be, right? And we'll know what's going in there instead of them just being able to do it by right. And then there's my comment also isn't showing, there's actually two sets of properties there. There's 3 more properties to the right that are single-family residential that right now that are also being rezoned to that highway commercial. In those, it's a different story. That would impact our neighborhood more adversely. So in general, my comment is if the zoning shouldn't be changed to be different than what it currently is. So even though I'm not wild about light industrial for that area, I think we want to go through the right process to do it, keeping with your procedures. And the same thing with these other properties to the right, that those, in other cases, residential, which is far preferable to the highway commercial zoning. Does that make sense?
It does. Well, just for the record, I believe that the property owner has been in contact with city staff, and they have agreed to the change. So now he hasn't come and asked for it.
Well, they should come through it, though.
Well, I mean, as long as it's always about, to me, it's about the property owners making the decision. And if he's willing to go to a more
Well,
restrictive zoning, then that's his choice.
My point is, I think that's a very good consideration to make. Yet, we don't know what his plans are for highway commercial are, and if he were to go through the normal public hearing process, then we would be aware of that and have an opportunity to comment on it. In this way, we don't have a chance to comment on it in the public forum, and we're sort of denied a bit of our due process as nearby residents. So I want you to consider that. That's consistent with what you've been doing. Just to point out, it's not only the property that sort of, it's part of that sort of Chevy dealership sort of angle. There's an additional 3 properties to the right of there that are single family. That just shouldn't happen. Does that make sense?
Can you put the map back up?
Yeah, we can get the map
Trying
pulled
to
back
figure
up.
out what she's talking, what
Any
part she's
comments,
talking
Ms. Kreitz?
Well, so Ms. Barth, that weird Z that we just put in, we just tried it, so I'm sorry that you had issues. It seems to still be working. So we just tested it out as we sat here from adding comments onto the map.
So move the X to the right, yeah, where that dot is. So that's where there's 3 properties. You can kind of see their lines faintly, and that's currently zoned single-family residential. And you can see to the right of there, Faith Community Church, right? That's a residential area. And so now you're sort of, that whole area is pretty large. These 3 other lots don't have they don't have flood plains in them. They don't have some of those challenges. So they could be developed in a commercial area, and you could see the access to that property.
Mr. Pons, or Ashley, didn't we just rezone some of this 4 or 5 months ago or something?
You did, and to Ms. Barth's point about it does seem to go against our usual standard. But in the time from 2021, when the framework, the future land use character map was adopted, until today, one of the other things that we as staff had to look at was what other development has happened in this area and what other rezonings have happened. So you did do some additional annexation rezoning as it went a little bit further to the west. And that was done as highway commercial or BH for the Chevy dealership, the U-Haul that's under construction now, and taking a look at how the roads interplay and how access is provided. This is the best solution to protect everything in this area from our opinion as staff.
That's one set of properties. There's 2 sets of things going on there, and I absolutely don't see how changing those 3 this is, I don't know, you know where I'm pointing at. If you look at that, where that, I don't know, with the little Interstate Parkway Road, that's where the dot is. There's no way that that's beneficial to us to have that turned into highway commercial zoning. Where the X is now in there. If you look.
Those are the 3 residential you were talking about?
Yes, it's currently zoned residential, and to the right of it's residential. And then to the, that bottom corner is residential as well. And then, it's the school. So the part behind the school is just, I think it's just undeveloped in there.
Yeah, so just to clarify, everything that doesn't have a color on it is not in city limits.
Correct, yeah. So,
Same individual on all of this?
No, the properties to the south are different property owners.
The three lots?
Yeah.
3 lots are different
No,
property
looks like
owners.
Two different individuals.
Have you spoke to them about changing or anything?
We tried to reach out. We weren't able to get a hold of all of them.
So, so there'll be other opportunities, right? So they can come before the board, right? And
This
rezone
is
it
it's a conversation to have with the planning commission instead of me as staff.
the correct way. It could come back before you at another time before you sort of close things up. But right now, I'd say on both of the properties, we'd prefer that you keep to your practice, right, of not rezoning a property, and give us an opportunity to hear it. That's for the one that's in the flood lanes, flood zones, but more crucially, the ones that are sort of highlighted now in yellow, that just should not be rezoned.
Mrs. Barr,
Yeah.
I'm sorry I was late and I missed the first part, but can you articulate your biggest fear? I'm trying to understand exactly what you're most fearful of because I missed.
Yep. So the highway commercial zoning, we know what it allows, that are things that are not really compatible with a neighborhood. That's why we have a neighborhood code. So if you look at where those properties lie, it's hard to tell from here, but the access to that property in yellow could be from our neighborhood, right? And that's the biggest concern, is that the access would be there, and then what would it be? So what could it be that could be loud, could be noisy, it could be
You mean-
commercial?
You mean you're fearful that we might direct the traffic through Woodland Forest
That's,
to?
that's part of it, but it's also what it is. So right now, we're going to talk about this property later. So Jack's, there was people parking trucks out there, loud noises. That's not great for the neighborhood. So one of my other comments that other people have echoed is the buffer between these zones, right, the commercial and the industrial zones in neighborhoods isn't sufficient enough, the minimum, to sort of take away from sort of the nuisances of lights, sound, pollution from a residential area.
How would it be accessed through Woodland Forest? I don't see that. We've
It's-
got the floodplain here, but we can't build across the
No,
floodplain.
there's a road.
A road
What's the name
where?
of the road? I'm trying to think of the name of the road.
Am I missing a road?
It's a dead-end road, and there's a stump out there. So when they access sometimes when they access the utilities in there, they were doing some other work, all those tractors came in through our neighborhood and went up that way to service that area.
Where are you talking about the stub road?
See what the PS is?
Oh, in the back, okay.
Yeah, and so there's that road slightly to the left.
So, yeah, just to,
There is a utility road in that location.
Yeah,
Yeah, so we
Which I-
already have that sort of as an ongoing thing.
and I would say to that point, they're not accessing it from the other side, probably because of this. It's a similar situation to what we see to the north, the property that we're currently talking about with the 4 comments of the floodway blocking off that entrance to their neighborhood.
Well,
These three
if you go to the right
single-family-
to access the other property, the floodway isn't such a problem, is it? Right? I mean, it's a little bit of it's there.
And also, just to be clear on time, 3 minutes has passed.
Do you have any other questions for me? But I really wish you would follow your practices, and then, or maybe we can have a neighborhood meeting with this person, just so we have some input on it. And I'm very concerned about the rezoning of the single-family residential to the highway commercial, because it's up against other residential areas,
So,
including
Ms.
ours.
Barth, you keep talking about us staying with our practices. I think this is exactly what our practice is. This is what our exercise has been, is going through different parts of, and that's what these, I think this is the sixth meeting of taking a
I've
segment.
been here. That's why I know what your practices are.
A segment of the city and trying to ascertain if our zoning is correct for that areas. And we have applied in just about every one we've gone through. We have applied rezoning to districts that we as the staff felt like and recommended to the board. So to say staying with our practices, I mean, this is what our practice is, exactly what we're trying to do.
I beg to differ.
And please allow me, and taking this from a light manufacturing to a highway commercial, which is, in our opinion, a lesser zoning, is taking it down a notch. Now, granted, somebody with that fits a highway commercial can come in here and build on that without trying to go in force if they fit the terms and conditions, which a lot of them typically don't. But the ability for us to allow someone to tie into that stub street a highway commercial, as long as I'm here, it's not going to happen.
Well, that's very encouraging to
I mean,
hear.
it just doesn't, it's not conducive with keeping of the neighborhood. But I think we would protect the neighborhood.
I would add, I think, I do recognize that you have changed zonings, but I think that's usually been, there's an existing use on the property, and these are vacant right now. So I appreciate that your intent is to look out for us, but I just wanted to make sure that I registered the concern, and I hope that you'll consider those two parts separately, the single-family residential area and then the light industrial area. That's what the current zoning is. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
The 3 lots now are residential.
Yes, they're undeveloped, and there are one today. And they're the only pieces of R1 that are within the city limits on that south side of Interstate Parkway. And as we looked, as staff, as we looked at that property, and Ms. Barth, we're adding your comment in right now so that the commission can consider it. So as we were looking at those pieces of property for us as staff, we realized that leaving them as SFR1 and single-family residential with so much other commercial in the area was actually less appropriate for those homes and would be unfair to anyone who were to develop in that location with its proximity to Buttermilk Road, Interstate Parkway, and other highway commercial uses.
You know, I've never, in 15 years, had anybody come to me and say, y'all took a vote and hurt our neighborhood. I've never had that. I mean, I think we're so protective of people. It's a small community. I just don't think we've ever done. I've never had anybody. If y'all ever had anybody go, look, y'all just waylaid our neighborhood. You know, and then you've got, you know, some of our actions have the council behind us, right? I just never have had anybody say that. Can you think of a situation where we've done something, where we've taken action, where the neighbor said, you hurt us?
I have less issues with downgrading to highway commercial, whatever you said you wanted to go to, than I do with the 3 lots. The 3 lots, to me, it's like we said a while ago, I hate to change something with the thoughts of, hey, this is what we think we want to build. When they get ready to build it, come to us, and then we may change it. So as far as downgrading the commercial use, to me, that's an improvement. But the 3 residential lots to say, hey, this is what may happen in the future, I don't think that our city council, if somebody came to them and said, hey, I'm going to build a XYZ business that's going to be good for the city, and we wouldn't change the rezoning if it was a positive change for any type of business in the future. But it could be, go by Faith Church, and you could get some kind of little neighborhood housing in there. That's just my thoughts. I don't have a problem with changing to the commercial. I just have a problem with the residential.
So Commission, I think what we probably want to do is we need to separate these 2 parcels or these 2 pieces of land out separately and talk about those comments so we can register your response for both pieces.
think the body obviously thinks the parcel that we're looking at as ML, we're all in agreement that it should be highway commercial. I think that is a protective measure, and it's also, I know it's a change, but the owner of the property has agreed with staff, that's what he would be agreeable to. So I think that's a fair one. To Mr. Pugh's point and Ms. Barr's point, I mean,
How
we
do-
want to pull out the 3 lots and keep them SFR, I mean, I don't have a real issue with that. I mean, if somebody
Mr.
does
Chairman,
want
do
to.
we ask the opinion of the owner? Is this like Mr. McGee guy here?
That's what I think the 3 lots we're talking about, maybe leaving them as is, right?
I reached out to this isn't something, it's not a hill I'm going to die on, you know, I get hired as a professional planner and we get opportunities to take looks at maps and decide what's good and right, or could be right, but y'all, it's not a hill I'm dying on tonight.
Her voice is kind of raspy tonight. I'm not sure I know what she said.
Yeah, it's not great, I'm so sorry.
Then we get captions.
A whiteboard.
I mean, I'm just wondering how Mr. McGee feels about it, his zoning.
Well, I think that's kind of the point that Ms. Barth is making, and that's a legit point. I mean, I know the property that's ML, the owner of the property has said he's fine with the change. So maybe we should leave the 3 as is.
Leave the 3 residential ones.
Yeah. Anybody got a,
When we addressed the property next to the Chevrolet place several months ago, there was no issue with it because they had a plan and we knew what was going there, and that's my only thing now is, I've always had a problem with saying, hey, this is what I think I'm gonna build. I don't know what you think you're gonna build. I wanna see it.
And I'm glad you bring that up, and I know it's hard to hear. I think that was exactly what Ashley was trying to say earlier, was that due to the new development here, the only access for these 3 lots being directly across from new commercial development.
I guess maybe the point could be potential if somebody did come off Old Buttermilk Road and acquire the property in the county and wanted to then acquire the property to those 3 lots, then it could become residential. But then you have the issue where, how do you turn off access off Interstate Parkway to that neighborhood? Because they're gonna want that.
Well, you know, I'm sorry. In the past, if something comes in the city, it comes in residential. And we let them in, and then if they want to change it, they come back and ask us. And 9 times out of 10, we approve it unless it's something that we don't think's appropriate. And I don't think that if somebody came to us with a plan next year or something that said, I'm gonna build Tim Harrison Construction out there, we wouldn't have a problem with doing it as long as we knew what was going on.
That'd be a special exemption.
Tim Harrison Construction number 2.
All right, so anybody got more comments or thoughts? You want to leave it as is on those 3 lots?
I'm good with it. I mean, like Ashley said, I don't think this is worth dying on the hill for, because if there is a use, somebody can come back, and we would probably turn it to highway commercial if they ask for it.
So are you recording that as we're okay with highway commercial on the plot property and then leaving
Yeah,
the
so just
3
to
as
clarify,
is?
this one here on your screen is going to remain as we've drafted it. These go back, these 3 go back to SFR1, equivalent to R1.
Like,
So they go back to what, Zach?
They go to essentially equivalent to what they are today, R1, SFR1.
All right, we'll move to a new area. This is at 3935 Woodland Forest Drive. This is a comment from Brock Quarter. I'm going to circle this as well on the screen so you can see the piece of property we're talking about. His comment is a comment of support. He says, I think the zoning should be highway commercial. bordered primarily by future HC uses and sits across the street from other HC uses. The border with existing R1 is extremely small and separated by varying topography. Currently, this is shown as SFR1, just for clarity. The other HC property that he is referencing is this property here.
But we're going to address this one comment here, right on this one parcel. That's
Yes.
the only comment we have on that. And I
Yeah,
think,
just the SFR1 property
I think-
that his comment is on.
like we said earlier, this is not a speculative body. This property is what it is now. Property owner's not here asking for the change, therefore we should leave it as is.
What is the current use on that property? Church.
Yeah.
I agree.
All right, we're going to move into several comments on Old McGee Road property, which you saw in the previous screenshot is directly to the east of this. Commenters include Jessica Ireland, Jared Corland Colburn, Kyle Corburn, Rod Shirley, Dr. Janice Nelson, Russ Curtis, Yusha Midkiff, Elisa Johnson, and Brock Quarter. We'll begin with this comment from Jessica Ireland. She says, this is a comment of concern. I think the zoning should be neighborhood commercial. Comment neighborhood commercial 100%. We'll run through all of these. Another comment of concern from Jared Cortland Colburn. He thinks the zoning should be neighborhood commercial. Absolutely, let's develop it highway. In fact, can we please get it zoned whatever the next exit 73 has? That looks amazing. We drive McFarland Mall, or as the Taj Mahal, as we call it, all the time and say, geez, I wish I could have something like this at our exit. Maybe we'll get lucky and it'll spread down to us. Hooray.
We'll have to ask the commenter.
Take it as support.
This comment is from Kyle Colburn. This is a comment of concern. He thinks the zoning should be neighborhood commercial. His comment says neighborhood commercial, not highway commercial. This comment is from Rod Shirley, a comment of concern. They think the zoning should be neighborhood commercial. The zoning is for neighborhood commercial, says their comment.
Can you circle the piece we're talking about?
Sure.
Okay, okay.
Dr. Janice Nelson says this should be neighborhood commercial. This is adjacent to single-family homes. A large buffer or lesser zoning would be better. Russ Curtis's comment says the zoning should be SFR1. I'm concerned any additional commercial development between Old McGee Road and Woodland Forest will negatively affect residential property value. Additionally, the adjacent property off Old McGee Road has uneven topography and would not benefit commercial development as well as create drainage problems for existing residential property. Yusha Midkiff says this zoning should be SFR1. This is a concern for the residents on Spicewood Street in Woodland Forest neighborhood. The neighborhood is residential with a lot of retired folks. The minimum buffer of 20 feet between a residential and highway business is too little. Elisa Johnson's comment says the zoning should be neighborhood commercial. This piece of property south of Old McGee Road is bordered by neighborhoods along 3 sides. While HC may be appropriate for the land along Skyland, the breakup by a residential street and the connecting private homes should necessitate an NC zoning. Brock Quarter has a comment of support, thinking this zoning should be highway commercial. I'm the owner of this and adjacent parcels currently zoned business highway. The proposed rezoning to HC appears to be the most consistent new classification with the existing zoning, and I support this designation. That should be our complete list. Zach, if you'll pop up that other slide, we can bring up the public commenters. I don't believe Jessica Ireland was here earlier. Is she here now? All right. Jared? Kyle Colburn, Rod Shirley, Dr. Janice Nelson. You want to come up and speak?
While she's on her way up, on that parcel, how many different parcels are there?
There's, it's one complete piece of property with no
LME
interior
Road.
property lines. And then you've got one property here, and then the other one there.
Okay.
So Brock owns that one.
Brock owns them both.
And we're talking about both pieces.
No,
Just the
well, you
bottom
can't,
piece.
the comments are all on the property to the south, but the properties are joined together.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Janice Nelson. I live in 4624 Spicewood Street. I'm at the bottom of that yellow, almost rectangle, sorry. My property will back up against the newly zoned highway commercial. My concerns are primarily buffer, which I've already stated, just because highway commercial to me means brighter lights 24/7, and I would like there to be something buffering that between the fact that all of those are, that whole line is nothing but residential. My other concern is drainage. Guys, I'm sorry, but it kind of all, you didn't see on the map, but it all kind of slants downhill. And right now, it's holding okay. But the drainage system in that neighborhood is built in the 70s. And it's like all of Tuscaloosa. Everything needs upgrading at the same time. And, you know, I wish we all had $1 billion and we could dig up everything. But it is a concern if you start taking the grass and the trees and all, and it all slides downhill.
Are you below it?
I'm on the hill. My concern is for my neighbors across the street because it will come down down the hill, and they have a small drainage ditch in the back. And none of them have ever been in a situation where there's been a lot of drainage problems. I used to live on Hargrove Road East across from those student apartments. I know about drainage.
It's
And so-
gravity.
Huh?
It's gravity, yeah.
So I would like there to be some, whatever decides to be there, I would like them to pay a lot of attention to just what's going to happen to the drainage and how much buffer can you please give us? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone next?
Russ Curtis, Usha Midkiff, Elisa Johnson.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to make a comment here. As we were looking into
Name
hearing-
and address for the record, please.
Oh, sorry, thank you. Elisa Johnson, 4666 Spicewood Street. I'd like to note that I'm not just here as a concerned resident on the street, but also as a representative for Woodland Forest Association of Homeowners. When we began looking at framework, we talked about how this was going to go across the city and make better neighbors of different property owners and different uses next door to each other. And we want to keep with that and be a good neighbor with Mr. Quarter. We are not trying to stop the flow of commerce. That is his property, but we would like to be a good neighbor as far as this should be neighborhood commercial. As it is, as I stated, bordered on three sides by residential. There is a street that bisects those two properties. And sorry, I took notes so I wouldn't get too lost, but this section doesn't actually touch the highway either. When I looked across developments as we moved down the Skyland and through this area, where other highway commercials areas were at, those were already developed and in use, and those that weren't did touch the highway. This one does not. I know that we've talked about this in the past, as recently as 21, and it was said then that he purchased this property in 2008 with the intent to develop it. Again, we're not trying to stop the flow of commerce, just be a good neighbor. I will say in 2008, he's had 16 years to develop it as he wanted to and has not. He did knowingly purchase property that at the time bordered a 40-plus-year-old neighborhood. Our homes are now in their 50s. This was not new to him that he was touching residential houses in our properties. I would just like to, again, express gratitude for your hearing us and your consideration as we,
He's been a pretty good neighbor, hasn't he?
has he?
16 years, he hadn't done anything.
He hasn't done anything. He did cut down the trees from the neighbors that I've heard who've been there longer and are dealing with drainage issues and needing new walls. The property line has not been maintained. I've got a barbed wire fence falling over in my backyard if he'd like to come take care of that. There is not much else seen. He did tear down the house in 2020, I believe, but the barn is still standing back there as well. Any questions or,
Thank you.
But he hadn't built anything on this site.
I'm sorry?
He hasn't built anything on this.
No, he's not, and that's where the consideration that he's not developed it. We're not trying to get in his way, just change it to neighborhood commercial so that we get the appropriate buffers between our houses and what goes there.
What buffer do you feel like is the right buffer between?
I spoke about those in December, and I'm still not sure what has actually changed, if anything has been changed yet in those buffers. When you live, we are the highest house on that street as far as the hill goes, and we're still only 2/3 of the way up it. Everything else is uphill from us, that property. So any light, as closer it gets to our house, the more likely it's going to be shining in. My bedroom window is 20 feet from that property line, downhill.
Did you tell me, did you say Spicewood Street?
Yes, sir.
That's where, so is the topography, is the topography from Spicewood Street down toward Skyland is downhill, correct? Is this, are y'all up on the hill above this property?
There's a ravine that kind of flows to the side of Janice's property.
Yeah.
It's a hill, it's kind of flat above us, so we are not on the hill, and then it continues to roll up before sliding
It's
down.
kind of rolling in there.
Yeah.
How long have you lived there?
I've lived there 6 years now.
6?
Any other questions for? I have a question for staff in a moment, though. Thank you. Anyone else care to speak for or against what we're discussing now? Staff, just for the record, if this was to stay as is, and if it was to develop commercially, explain the buffer requirements on a general level.
Yeah, we can, Mr. Pons and I can tag team this a little bit. I think we've got some slides that we can show as well. And I think sorry about that. It's good to also talk a bit about lighting. I know that Dr. Nelson brought up lighting standards. The cool thing about what we're proposing as a part of framework and the new zoning update are lighting standards for all properties. So any new development today that comes in, Zach and his staff don't have an ability to tell a gas station that, or a large truck station that you can't have crazy bright lights that are shining onto other people's properties. We now have only allowed lights that are fully cut off, that are only down directed and can't spill onto adjacent properties. And that's a huge win for the city as a whole, because that's one of the big things that we hear about, and it stinks. I remember when I was planning director, Mr. Pons just had to tell somebody the other day, or yesterday in an email, we just don't have lighting directional standards right now. So that's a big, huge win for us as we move forward. When it comes to buffers, Mr. Pons, I know you just pulled that up. Ms. Johnson is correct. She and we got a chance to speak about some of the buffer standards in here. There are a couple of these standards that are less than what we have today. And there are a couple standards that are more restrictive than what we have today. And we do want to take a look one more time at these buffer standards between especially our commercial uses and our neighborhood uses. You want to go through those real quick?
Yeah, sure. So you can see there's two different types here that we've specified and some options that you can choose from when it comes to whatever type. So if we look at the proposed use table over here on the right-hand side, the existing use type or if vacant, zoning district of adjoining land. So all commercial uses next to household living uses would fall under that B category there. And then you'd go down to the B buffer type, which is semi-opaque. You've got a couple of options here, which would provide a pretty hefty amount of trees under option 1, and it would be a 30-foot buffer. And then option 2 would allow a 20-foot buffer, however, you'd have to do an opaque wall. So in this situation, that would be the case.
Did you say, is the wall and the buffer an either or are they both?
Both.
Okay.
So the buffer would be 20 feet if you build the opaque wall, or 30 feet if you don't.
Okay.
But then you have different types of landscaping that you have to provide based off of each.
So the difference, and just real quick, the difference in what we're proposing is zoning versus the neighborhood commercial, or highway commercial, I think highway commercial, isn't it? Versus neighborhood commercial, what's the difference in the buffer?
Those would be the same buffers.
So the buffer doesn't change no matter what the
Doesn't,
zone
either one of
is.
them. Okay.
It's the use, the proposed use compared to what the existing land use is.
But we would have downlighting.
Downlighting no matter what.
Okay, thank you.
We don't have anybody else to comment on this. We're here for any further discussion.
Well, I think back to being consistent, we don't have the property owner here asking for any change of zoning. Obviously, we're putting in place some standards that will protect neighborhoods via buffers and walls and lighting. And it seems like we'll get the same buffers and same lighting that you would with neighborhood commercial. I know this property, like everybody does, it's been talked about being built for years, and someday it will be. And it's probably going to require a lot of that property. So, again, I just kind of feel like we should honor the wishes of the developer to keep his property as it is. He's the owner of the property.
I think the only other concern was, I think Dr. Nelson had concern about the drainage issues that were out there. And Dr. Nelson, part of this process that they would go through would be an LDP, land development permitting, that would, the edit or the mandate of that permitting is that they cannot affect your drainage. In fact, they've got most likely they would approve the drainage coming out of the drainage points of the neighborhood, and they would not be allowed to put more water onto your property. The engineers would review that. This one would, this property, as large as it is and with the topography, would mandate a drainage study from an engineer that would check all the water calculations, flow calculations to improve the water quality and water flow off of this property.
I understand that, I truly do.
Man, you got to come to the podium for comment.
This is me personally. I lived on Hargrove Road East, and on the other side, what Mr. Hinton sold all of that property and they developed it into student apartments. And I came to all 21 meetings, and I listened to everybody talk about hydro engineers and the studies. And it flooded the neighborhood like never before they even got it constructed, and did that twice. And let's just go to the end. 3 years later, I think about 3 years later, me and 8 of my neighbors got letters about eminent domain, and in order to maintain the drainage properly, they tore down all the houses and they fixed the problem. I
see where you're coming from. I
I'd
understand.
like that not to happen again.
That was a doozy.
It was a unique situation in Tuscaloosa. How
When
about
was that? When was that?
2017, somewhere around 2016, 2017, you know.
Somebody missed their tables.
Oh, yes.
I'm humbled by your presentation. I feel your pain, and I hope this would never happen to you again. And I promise you, I hope things are different now.
I just want to be sure that this time it won't be me, because I'm on the side of the hill and it'll drain right past me. But the neighbors across the street with that little drainage ditch in the back of their property don't even have a clue.
You have every right to have this conversation. I promise.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other additional comments from Commission?
Well,
Staff?
Commission, those were all of the map-related comments we had this evening. I know we do need to finish up this one, and then we'll see if there's anyone in the audience who has any other pieces of properties to discuss that we can add tonight.
So, I mean, I think, again, I think we're making some improvements in our buffering and our drainage and all that. So, again, I think without the request of the property owner, we've stuck pretty consistent with leaving it as is until there's a request.
Even the property owner in his notes said he thought the buffer was adequate.
I didn't see that.
I thought I read where he thought 20 feet wasn't enough or something. Is that a
I
dream
mean, if
map?
it's ever developed, we'll definitely see.
The comment
come
is in
up.
regards to the zoning being appropriate. There's not a mention of the buffer here.
Okay. Anybody in disagreement with keeping it as is? Okay, as is.
All right, we will
Yeah, I must have
begin
dreamed
pulling
that.
these up in order. And we'll be adding the comment to keep as is, if that is appropriate.
And Commission, one thing that we can commit as well in this is, and Ms. Giles will go over that at the end of the meeting, but we'll be adding in some very specific topics just to nail out and finish. So what we'll commit to doing also is adding the buffers in as a specific point of discussion to make sure it's right as we wrap this up.
Is McGee Road a city road or a county road?
As it's on either side, so where you see it on the map, until the gray area, it is a city-maintained road. And then in the gray area, the county maintains it until the very end where you see it in the yellow and the city picks it back up again. So if that's not confusing.
So no one came, had any comments from the county on the county property owners had no comments?
No.
I mean, this is going right to their property.
Well, Commission, we have, as you can see on the screen, we've handled all the comments that were provided on the map that saved appropriately, including our weird Z from this evening. But I think this would be a good time to open up if there are other public comments that need to be had.
Are there any in the audience for further comment or questions? No, not really questions, but comments, please come forward. Name and address for the record.
Hello. Lillian Finley, 12559 Daffron Lane, Cottondale, Alabama. I saw on the map, I don't know if it's appropriate for tonight's meeting, but that area is roped in a dark green line.
Let's get the staff to help us pull up where we are.
Yeah, we'll get that pulled up for you. 12559.
Correct.
Oh,
Expand.
are we in the right location? That's just the border of our map.
Okay, I didn't know this is my first time to come to one of these, and I wanted to see why we were on the radar, what appeared to be the radar of this evaluation period.
Commission, if you'd like, I can handle this one.
Is that count?
It's just the border of our planning jurisdiction.
Okay.
So your property sits within our planning jurisdiction, and it was part of the overall framework map process. But you're so far in the county and so far on the edges of anything, none of what we discussed tonight is any trouble for you.
Will it be in the future?
Not in our lifetimes.
Okay,
No.
that's good to know.
Yeah, not in our lifetimes.
Okay.
You're so far out. And there's no sewer access out there, as you know, so I can't imagine any zoning reaching you within either of our lifetimes.
Okay, I just noticed that when I touched on the map for June 26, it says that our house is being evaluated, so I don't really know what that means.
No, you're good. It's,
Is that an error of the map? County taxes? Oh, okay, okay, thank you.
You don't have any hidden secrets we need to know about or anything?
Well, I do have a concern, though, for you guys, because it's on the border of the city, and it's the PGP methane gas compressor station. Our family is disproportionately negatively impacted by that methane company. Their station sits above us in topography, and it's excessively loud, anywhere from 45 to 115 decibels, 24 hours a day. And I've been home, I was in Kentucky for about 15 years and moved home to help my elderly parents. I'm the POA for both of them. And didn't realize the problem because they've been in there since the 90s, that piece of property is right next, touches my father's land and where I live across from them. And it is about 13 feet, if I understand, above us in topography. So when the thing is running 24 hours a day, it is excessively loud. We believe it's contributing to health problems in our family and the community. And I'm a nurse, so I'm very concerned about this. I noticed that PGP has a planned meeting with oil and gas on May 7. It happens to be at 10 a.m. when working people are at work, so I would like to go to it, but I can't. Where they are going to be asking the Oil and Gas Board to continue to allow them to keep their orphaned, abandoned wells open for another year. And there are many of them in the area where, right around our house, the address I stated earlier, and I'm very concerned about that. It's also within a 2-mile or less radius of Bryant High School, Eastwood High School, and Woodland Forest Elementary School, and Woodland Trace and Woodland Forest on the Buttermilk Road side. This is a very serious concern in terms of environmental justice and also health and well-being of people in the community, especially all of these areas that have been discussed tonight, because they do blowdowns and flares, which I can hear and see and smell from my house. And if that property is real close to the city line, if that compressor station could ever be evaluated as to its appropriateness of continuing to stay there, my family and I would greatly appreciate it, and I'm sure the community would. So I don't know if that's appropriate for tonight, but I wanted to get that in there.
I think you ought to reach out to the county representative on this. I mean, this body really can't do anything.
Already have. I've gone down that route through Senator Allen.
You're saying that the pump isn't running?
The pump runs 24 hours a day. The compressor station is excessively loud. And they have orphaned wells that are emitting methane and most likely other compounds into the air.
When you say, what's an orphan well?
Orphaned wells or abandoned methane wells that are open to the air. And they are allowing methane and whatever else is in the pipeline to come up into the atmosphere, and it affects everyone in the area, including the areas of the people that we're talking tonight on the Buttermilk Road, Woodland Forest area. Because it travels 2 to 3 miles radius when they do a blowdown, and the orphan wells are just open, they're uncapped.
So Jimbo, from the city standpoint, with her being in the city and right on the border of the county, and this gets out of our jurisdiction.
I understand,
so-
yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, she's not in the city, so it's in PJ, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we can.
In the PJ, do we have any does she have any rights for noise, for the
No.
noise? That'd be a what?
Private nuisance action,
What is that?
private nuisance action.
Oh, private
Where you sue.
nuisance.
Yeah. And you can imagine our one family, we have the biggest land mass between Hargrove Road East and the Daffron Road is 200 acres roughly.
Yeah,
And nobody can see it or hear it except for us.
yeah, wow.
And it's nestled in such a way, you know, and they have a berm built on the Hargrove Road East side that nobody can see it. So the citizens of the area probably aren't even aware it's there, but I am every single day. And I'm concerned from a health standpoint, community health, why it continues to be able to function in the manner in which it's functioning, and actually why it's actually even still able to be located where it is, touching very close to the city property line. So
I wish we could.
I
offer you
appreciate
some
any,
advice.
future evaluation of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else care to speak for our comments about this evening? Okay. Having heard the staff, wrap us up, or
Sure. Our next steps for this evening are to take a vote on the proposed map and the changes that were adopted. We only have one change, those 3 pieces of property from HC to
Right.
SFR1.
so can we do a voice vote on that, Mr. Woodson?
Voice vote's fine.
Okay, all those in favor of approving the one change we made tonight, those 3 parcels, and accepting those as is, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Ayes have it.
All right, we want to look at our schedule going forward. This takes us through August. We do want to make note that we will be adding those specific additional topics to our regularly scheduled planning commission meetings as well, in May, June, and July. We will,
In May, June, and July, we'll bring up
as needed.
nuggets of topics.
As needed, yep. We want to review those items that take additional research and additional conversation and not take away from the map updates that we're doing in this process, but that will be included in the legal notice and the emails and notices you all receive. Our next zoning map meeting is May 22nd, and that will cover Alberta and the McFarland corridor, getting into the rest of the areas in June, and then wrapping up in July and August.
Okay. All right. Comments, questions for?
We want to please always encourage folks to be checking the website and providing comments before the meeting. It obviously makes it very orderly and efficient.
Right. Thank you very much. Meeting adjourned.